What's up, guys?
What's up?
Welcome to another episode of Mark and Jen.
Breakfast.
Well, this is why I told him to do the intro today. Because I'm just, I don't know, a little tired today, even though I'm excited to be here. And so I said to him, why don't you start? Because I always do the intro. And he was like, nope. And so it should have said, I guess, welcome to Breakfast with Mark and Jen.
Breakfast.
We're going to keep that whole intro so you guys can see what it's like when we're trying to start.
Right.
But anyway.
What are y'all eating for breakfast this morning?
Yeah, you could tell us in the comments. I'm having porridge. And I realized it's not just West Indians that say porridge. Actually, British people say porridge for hot cereal. So it's probably where, Caribbean and even certain West African countries get it from. So I'm having porridge. So whether you are British, West Indian, or West African, porridge could be oatmeal, it could be cream of wheat, it could be cornmeal, it could be so many different things. That's what I'm having. Clearly, you could see Mark's doing waffles. So what are you guys' breakfast items? What are your favorites?
4 waffles.
He's doing 4. But listen, he's a 6-foot grown man, so I guess...
Hey, you're not going to give them my weight.
I actually don't keep up with his weight, to be honest.
6 foot grown man, no weight.
Well, guys,
Right,
I really don't keep up with his weight, though. Because he's never been... he feels like at certain points he's been overweight in our marriage, but I've always found him attractive and I find his weight fine. So it's not like I'm keeping tags like, Mark, you come on now.
Well, I mean, I said weight. I didn't talk about unattractiveness.
Okay, well.
Because, 2 different things.
Yes and
I
no.
always had the swag on.
Yes and no, because people are attracted to different body types. So for some people, a skinny man is unattractive. For some people, a thick man is unattractive. Ladies, it's all about what you prefer. And guys are the same way when it comes to us. But anyway, that's not really what we're talking about today. We're talking about friendships outside of your marriage and how to handle those. This can go so many different directions, but I guess I'll ease people into it and say, if you're a wife, how do you handle your female friends? Because sometimes we feel like the only threatening friendship outside of a marriage is the friendship with someone of the opposite gender. But friends of the same gender can be threatening if you have the wrong friends. I'll start off by saying that when I got engaged, there was an older woman in our church who was more like a grandmother to me. And she said to me, now that you're getting married, Jen, don't keep too many single lady friends.
She had experience.
And she was the woman who, by the time her husband passed, they had been married over 60 years. And so it wasn't like she had a fly-by-night marriage and you're like, oh, you're probably just being petty. She was like, don't keep too many single female friends. And I think in my early 20s, I kind of was like, man, that's kind of harsh.
Right.
But she wasn't telling me to abandon all of my single friends, but she was like, you have to understand that you're now in a different category and you have to behave in a manner that says, hey, I'm married and you're single. So does it mean that you just forsake all of your single female friends if you're getting ready to be a wife? No. But guess what? There are certain things that you shouldn't do if you are married. So this probably applies, Mark, to even guys and their guy friends, what I'm about to say.
Okay.
If you are married, you do not go to your friends and talk to them about your spouse's weaknesses. I don't know why he's laughing. I've never told my female friends Mark's weaknesses. I just haven't.
Because I don't have many.
Okay. So if Mark chooses to disclose any of his flaws or challenges that he has as a person on a public platform or to individuals, that is his prerogative. But, it's funny because you, as a wife or as a husband, should not be telling your single friends, oh, well, you know what? My spouse is just terrible at arguing. They're always yelling, or they're always this, they're always that. And they're over here egging you on, telling you, girl, you should get rid of him. Bro, you should get rid of her. And sometimes those end up being the same friend you needed to worry about. And that's just real talk. I mean, I don't know how guys communicate, Mark, but sometimes the way women connect is over chit chat. But your spouse should not be the topic of chit chat, especially if you're talking about their flaws, their shortcomings, their insecurities. Those are not for public consumption and discussion.
No. And the problem is that, you're allowing outside influences and conversations to then get into your head. Some of the things that we don't really realize when we get married is we feel like our marriage is so Teflon, it's so insulated that nobody's voice from the outside can actually influence our decisions inside the marriage. And that is not true.
No.
And so that's why you actually have to guard yourself against talking with people about your marriage that are not in your marriage because they have influence on your marriage.
Yeah, because if it's not a therapist that is trained to be an unbiased party, they need to stay out. I honestly believe, Mark, that there are some couples out there who have a marriage that is on the rocks or has completely dissolved simply because they didn't know how to keep their friends out of their marriage. And you'll be shocked at the person who you thought was your friend, how they can talk you out of your marriage.
Yeah.
Because God knew the flaws and challenges that your spouse had when he linked you with them. But he was saying, listen, you can handle this. You guys can get through these challenges and these flaws together. But where you went wrong or where you go wrong is when you start inviting other people to weigh in. How do you ask somebody to weigh in on a household they're not a member of? And a therapist is the exception because therapists are trained to be unbiased parties. They're trained to know what to look for, what to listen out for, what to tackle, what to maybe step away from.
Right.
But your friend is not your friend is not trained to tackle your household issues. And they're not coming in unbiased also. That's the other problem. And so sometimes when you share things about your spouse that may not be pleasant, you actually may be able to get over it, though, in a couple of weeks, couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
But your friend, a month, a year later, girl, is he still doing X, Y, and Z? Bro, is she still doing X, Y, and Z? They're still mad. They're still upset. They're still like, girl, why are you with him?
So to dig even deeper.
Yeah.
That's the thing about when you're married and what type of friends you should have and how close you should allow people to get to your marriage. So one of the great rules of thumbs that you should actually uphold is understand how to keep single friends in their proper place as it relates to your marriage. We're not saying you can't have any friends that are single, but they need to be in a specific category.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be very unwise of you to have a best friend that's single and have them really, really close to your marriage.
At your house all the time.
Because single people don't think like married people.
Right.
Let's just call it what it is. They don't think the same. And because of that, they won't understand a lot of the nuances of marriage. You can't read a textbook on marriage and understand marriage.
Yeah.
So if you're single, you're not going to be able to empathize with a lot of the things that I'm going through.
Yeah.
So if I explain it to you, you're going to take it the wrong way. And then that means you're going to give me the wrong advice.
Right.
So if you're a married couple, you can have single friends, but they need to stay at a particular distance.
Right.
And it's in a specific category.
Yep.
So that they're not able to negatively influence your marriage. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's just practical so that you can be successful in your friendships when you're married.
Right.
Like, you gotta know that somebody that's single, they may be cool with you, but they're not cool with the marriage. And because you're a married person, then it's going to be difficult to be cool with you and not cool with the marriage and then have a cool friendship with that person.
Wow.
That person needs to be able to embrace all of you. And now that you're married, but they're single, there's just things they're not going to understand.
Yeah.
And so you got to be really careful about, and this is just friends that are single of the same sex. So we're not even crossing lines yet.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten into opposite gender
We're just talking
friendships.
about you had a friend before you got married.
Yeah.
Now you're married, they're still single. How do you navigate the waters of that relationship?
Yeah, you're right that single people don't think the way married people think. Because, for example, if you're a single person, you may not necessarily check in with someone about your whereabouts, right? Some people may for safety, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, if you're single, you don't necessarily have someone that you're saying, oh, you know what, after work, I'm going to stop at this place, this place, this place, so I'm going to be home late, but just know that this is where I am. So if you're married and your single friend says, let's go out for dinner after work. If you're like, you know what, girl, let me just check with my husband. Your single friend may say, that's ridiculous. Is he controlling? You don't owe him your whereabouts. You're a grown woman. But then your husband is freaking out because he doesn't know where you are. But you have also disrespected him because now it's not just your time. It's now our time. So it's the same difference. Anytime you've ever gone to play golf or, go to play basketball or whatever, you've always given me the respect to say, hey, Jay, I'm going to do this on this date. Do we have anything already planned?
Right.
Or is this cool? And the wrong guy friend would be like, Mark, why are you asking her?
Right. She run that marriage.
Right.
Because they don't understand the nuances of marriage. They have nobody to check in with.
Yeah.
And to a single person, checking in is controlling.
Yeah.
And so you have all these things that are conflicting. And then you're out to have a good time, but you're out with your single friends, and all they're doing is saying, man, you must have a controlling spouse because you got to check in all the time. They don't understand how marriage works.
Yeah, and it's not just about safety, it's about respect. And I think sometimes we forget that when God says the two shall become one, we forget just how into what detail that goes. It's like I said, it's no longer his time or her time. Now it's our time. It's our house. It's our finances. And so you going off and ripping and running, as I grew up hearing with Southern roots, ripping and running.
I can hear your mom saying that right now.
It's like a best phrase ever. And the funny thing is, you didn't grow up with Southern roots, but you know what it means, though.
Right. You don't want me to give the Jamaican phrase. Galavanting.
Oh, wow. Okay, well.
Galavanting.
We over here.
Just galavanting all over town.
We over here.
What is
in Black America, we say ripping and running. But the point is, you can't be out here ripping and running and your spouse has no clue where you are. How is that respectful? And put yourself in your spouse's shoes. Do you want your spouse to just be out in the streets without letting you know where they are and disrespecting your time like that? No, you don't.
No, you don't want that. And the thing is like, you brought up a great point about the two becoming one. The Bible says that a man is going to leave his father and mother and cleave to the woman, and they're going to become one flesh. If you have to leave your father and your mother, what makes you think that you don't have to disassociate to some level?
That's good.
With your single friend.
That's good.
So your single
you
friend,
leave your mom and dad,
right,
but you cleave to your friends.
It is ridiculous.
That's a good one.
It's ridiculous. So if you have to leave your mom and your father in order to be married and for your marriage to be successful, there's a certain severance, distance that you have to create with your single friends in order for marriage to come together, in order for you guys to cleave. And a lot of couples are struggling just because they want to live life the same way as they did before they were married. Now, after they're married, they want to live life the same way. They're going to be like, how come I can't go out every Friday? What do you mean you can't?
Right.
What do you mean, how come you can't go
why
out
can't I go
every Friday?
Out for brunch every Saturday? How come after work I can't go with my coworkers out to, whatever restaurant you would go to when you were all single? And it's like,
You trying to do single stuff as a married woman.
Or a married man, yeah. And I think you have to also ask yourself then, if you're an engaged couple or you're a single person that comes across this, ask yourself, are you really ready for marriage?
Let's go.
Because it requires you to rebrand yourself. Successful marriage requires rebranding. And what do I mean by that? You don't lose who you are at your core, meaning you shouldn't lose, your passion that God has given you. You shouldn't lose your desire to accomplish certain
and even
goals.
your identity.
Yeah, you're rebranding because now what you could do in terms of your schedule, that changes. You now have somebody that you have to check in with. All of the goals that you had as a single person doesn't mean you still can't reach them, but maybe now the timetable changes. So you have to rebrand yourself. Same great product, but just in a different package.
In a different package. So you can't out here be married but living the single life.
No.
And then complaining and saying our marriage isn't working.
Correct.
It's because you're still trying to be single. And friends have a lot of influence over that.
Yeah.
You have to choose your spouse over your friends. Okay, so...
Now, the Bible, real quick though, the Bible says iron sharpens iron. And this is why we believe it is important for couples to have other healthy, godly couples that they can be around and hang out with from time to time, because iron sharpens iron. So if you're a married couple and the only people you keep around you are single people, that's brass sharpening iron, and it's never going to happen. And single people, if you're coming across as, I'm not saying you're weak. I'm saying
Why
you just
brass?
don't because I wanted to
Just cheap brass.
make it really clear that your single friends cannot sharpen your marriage. Even if they're rooting for you, they just can't do it. How can they do it? They don't have experience.
Yeah, and folk gonna be looking at this saying, oh, I can help my friend who's married, and what are y'all trying to say about... Listen, we've been married going on 16 years. A single friend cannot sharpen your marriage.
No.
They can be there for you and add value to your life. They can't sharpen your marriage.
Iron
and
sharpens
if you're
iron.
too close, rubbing up against somebody that's single, they could be of the same sex, that's your best friend, but you're rubbing up on them, hanging out with them all the time, it's gonna dull your
that's why
marriage.
the Bible says iron sharpens iron, meaning like metal has to sharpen. So a strong, godly marriage is needed to sharpen another strong, godly marriage, or a marriage that's seeking to get there.
Right.
Not a marriage being sharpened by... it's just not going to happen.
No. It's a totally different utensil. If you're talking about knives in a drawer, a kitchen drawer, being single is a totally different utensil than being married. So we're not trying to diminish singlehood, single people. We're saying it's different.
Yeah, it's just different.
It's different, and people need to understand that if you're going to be sharpening your marriage, getting better, then you need to rub up on the right type of utensils and tools in that kitchen drawer. So, now that's talking about friends of the same sex. That's talking about some of your best friends that you went to school with in college. Some of your friends that you hung out with before you got married. Now, how do you have friends of the opposite sex if you're
friends. If you're a male, this is my message to you. No new friends, no applications. I'm not taking any.
Wow.
Access denied.
Serious? You can't have any male friends.
I think that has to be an even more careful dynamic that you watch.
Right.
Because the reality is, I did have a couple of guy friends before we got married. But my mom gave me enough wisdom to know when you get married, you cannot be just out hanging out with them. You cannot be spending hours on the phone with them. You cannot go to them for advice, because that's even more dangerous. Because now what happens is when it's the opposite gender, not only do you run the risk of them not understanding how a marriage works, but you don't want your emotions to start getting tangled up. And all of a sudden, because you're having trouble in your marriage, Now you're catching these feelings.
But I
that
thought you were
didn't think you could
committed.
catch.
I thought you were
That's
a
what
strong Christian.
everybody thinks they're committed and a strong Christian until they're not. What's that phrase by Mike Tyson? Everybody has a plan
Until they get punched in that
until
mouth.
you get punched in the mouth. And if you think the enemy is gonna let you have a friend of the opposite gender and nothing ever tempts you, you've got the wrong mindset.
Right.
Because the enemy is going to be like, oh, he's talking to her for all those hours. She's talking to him for all those hours. Let me cause a little trouble in their marriage. So now she's leaning on him hard or he's leaning on her hard. Then you lean on that person, then your emotions get, and before you know it, you're like, wait, why am I so caught up?
Why am I, like,
I
this
didn't
was
even
my
used
ugly
to-
friend.
What? Oh, wow.
Like, this was my ugly friend that I didn't even think twice about.
Right.
How all of a sudden is this person attractive to me? Why? Because time has a way of shifting our emotions.
Yeah.
Time has a way of bringing people together emotionally that would never even think about each other if there wasn't as much time being spent together.
Yes.
Because the way that God created us is that he created us as humans to be relational.
Right.
And so he made that innate attraction for the most part. You have the innate attraction to the opposite sex.
Right.
And so if you spend time with somebody and you think that's just your ugly friend that you'll never think twice about, good luck spending extra time with that person.
Yep.
All of a sudden, their texts are a little bit sweeter. All of a sudden, their words are a little bit more comforting. And your wife's words, your spouse's words are a lot more cold.
Wow.
And then you're in a problem.
Yeah.
So people out here acting like, why would what are you, a weak person? What is, you're a weak spouse? Your marriage is weak if you can't, hang out with somebody of the opposite sex. No, it's actually strength.
Yep.
For me to be like, here are the lines.
Yep.
Here is my boundary.
Yep.
And I will not allow
Yeah.
myself to get caught up. Why? Because I don't trust my flesh. I don't trust me.
Yeah.
I trust God. I trust my spirit. I trust my marriage. And I love my spouse and my marriage enough to stay close to them and not get close to somebody else.
Yeah, we don't personally, neither one of us hangs out with members of the opposite sex alone. And neither one of us, well, first of all, we're not big phone people to begin with.
Right. Like, text me, and text me infrequently.
Okay. Well,
Okay?
And there you have it. And this guy's a pastor. So anyway.
Text me infrequently.
But when we do talk on the phone, we don't spend these ample amounts of time talking to people who are single that are of the opposite gender. As a matter of fact, I can't really think of the last time I've had just this phone conversation with somebody. I don't even text. Like, the guy friends that I say are my friends, I don't even know if we're really friends anymore because we don't really communicate often like that. And if they do, maybe it's like, hey, Merry Christmas to you and Mark. Something light, but like we don't continue the conversation because I think we're both aware of the fact that no.
Right.
And I appreciate them respecting me and you enough, but you know where that respect came from? It started with me. Started with me setting the boundary.
Yeah.
I'm in a relationship now, so no. So your friends, your single friends of the same or opposite gender may not even know what boundaries should be created.
Right.
The responsibility is on you.
on
And a
you.
successful marriage is a choice. You don't fall into a successful marriage. It's a everyday choice to get up and do all of the things that you can do to safeguard it, and then you leave the rest to God.
Right. So you have to make a choice.
It's a
to
choice.
say, I'm going to choose to keep other people, other friends of the opposite sex outside of my life, of the inner circle of my life. So they can't even get close to me if they wanted to. Paul says, I put no confidence in my flesh. The Apostle Paul said that.
Yeah.
So people looking at Pastor Mark like, oh, Pastor Mark don't trust his flesh. You need to read your Bible.
Right.
Paul said, I put no confidence in my flesh.
Yeah.
So we need to be wise. And the stronger you get as a Christian, the closer you get to God, you realize, number one, you're saved by grace. Number two, it's about the boundaries that you're able to put around your flesh that actually keeps you.
Right.
Nobody
Exactly.
walks out here saying, hey, tempt me, and then that shows my strength. In fact,
Right.
God says, I don't even tempt you with evil.
Right.
Because he's the type of God that says, hey, I love you enough to not even put you in that position.
Yeah. That's always the enemy.
I don't even put you in that position. So why are you out here putting yourself
Yeah.
in that position?
Yeah.
Why are you hanging out with people of the opposite sex and you're married?
Right.
And then you're wondering why things are feeling a little bit different in your marriage.
Yeah.
Why you're not as close. Because you're a relational being and you can only give so much to someone else.
Right.
And not build a bond with that person. And that's how people get caught up. Like, you can't be like, y'all don't want me to talk on these marriage talks. Like, how do you fall into the bed with somebody?
Oh boy.
How do you fall? You can trip and fall outside on the curb because you didn't see that stick right in front of you. So you tripped and fell. But how do you fall into the bed with someone? No. Every man is tempted when they're drawn away by their own lust. So you were lured.
Yeah.
You were drawn into that situation. It didn't just happen.
Yeah.
It was over time. Whether that time was a week, whether that time was a month or a year, you put yourself into that predicament
Yeah.
and situation. So we're trying to help couples out here and we want y'all to know that successful marriages are not successful without boundaries.
No, and honestly, this is why someone coined the term or the phrase or the idea that for a marriage to work, love is just not going to be enough.
Come on.
Because you can love somebody and still do something to disrespect them, hurt them. Not that you set out to do that,
Right.
but your love is a great foundation for your marriage. But you have to have more than just love, because there's a lot of people out here that you may love, but you can't live with. Right? And so...
Right. I mean, when you're choosing a spouse, they don't tell you this, but what they need to tell you is, don't just worry about whether or not you love the person. Can you live with the
Yeah.
person?
And-
like, if I can't live with you, we can't be married.
And if you rely on only love to hold your marriage together, that means you're not adding all of the other ingredients that are important, like you mentioned, the boundaries,
Yeah.
the ability to throw in respect, all of these things. If you don't have those in addition to love, it's not going to be enough.
It's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. I think it's a good talk.
Very good talk.
I think it's a good talk. And we've got some more ammunition where that came from, if y'all ready. But I think that's a good way to just talk about friends in marriage.
Yep.
And how to work some of those interesting relationships in order to keep your marriage together.
Yep.
So I like it.
I love it.
Got anything else?
No.
All right. Well, listen, she always says, why don't you open? Well, then I'll close today. All right. So that's our talk about how to deal with friends in your marriage. Want y'all to have a great day. This has been Breakfast with Mark and Jen, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Peace out.